Hi, welcome back to Any Bit Fever Dreams. This is about my F256K, but could also apply to a Junior, especially if they were made in year one of their release in 2023. If you're not aware what those retro-inspired new computers are, head on over the description for some links and some reading about them. So a few weeks ago, Stephanie posted about a minor component mistake that would affect those year one production units. It turns out the wrong mini jack socket was used and outputs mono sound instead of stereo. By that, I mean this socket right here, the one that accepts those bog standard 3.5mm audio cables. However, even if you have one of those year one units, you still have the option to use the stereo RCA jacks that you can find besides it. Now, this is a really minor deal in the grand scheme of things. Sure, the 3.5mm socket is easier to use, especially if your thing is using older style wired headphones. Using speakers, not everyone will actually notice mono sound unless they're told about it. As far as I'm concerned, I paid in part for the sound capabilities of this machine in the long term, so I'm going to make sure I have them. This is what Steph explained was the wrong 3.5 audio socket schematics, which forces mono sound. Here's what the right stereo schematic is going to look like. The exact part that you need for the swap is part number SJ1-3555NG, a CUI device. So I'll show you a bit of footage of how I did the swap. It involves opening up the case, tearing the motherboard out, desoldering the old socket and replacing in the new one. I also screwed up in the process with one of the soldering pads, but I was able to repair my mistake, so I'll be showing that as well. I'll finish with some before and after audio tests. There are many ways to remove solder from those 5 solder pads of the audio socket. I decided to go with a solder wick, which usually does the trick for quick jobs. I don't own a fancy desoldering gun station thing, since the expense would not be worth it for me personally. I've also used the end-activated solder sucker, which in retrospect is maybe what I should have used this time. The thing about solder and multiple pins is that you think you got most or almost all of the solder out, but a thin layer of it can still exist on the other side of the board and hold your component really tightly. It was after I scrubbed the flux out of the board using isopropyl alcohol, rinsing with water, rinse and repeat a few times, then washing off the excess water with alcohol to let it dry up using a fan, that I noticed the damage. The leftmost pad out of this row of 5 holes was torn up. The trace that leads to it was torn and lifted partially in the air. As you can see, this part of the circuit is used since it connects to the resistor R83 and continues on to the capacitor nearby. Sometimes you get lucky and you tear off a pad that is actually unused, but no such luck today. The reason why this even happened at all is that it was getting late. I wanted this done, and I was obstinate in pressing on with the solder wick method. Getting all of the solder off of 5 pins is never easy to completely achieve, so you're tempted to cut corners and use a bit of pulling force on the socket you want removed while you apply heat, hoping that the melted state of the last pins will let you pull out the component. That plan stops working when you have 2, 3, or more pins still stuck with solder. With some amount of luck and chip quick solder that stays melted at a slightly lower temperature, you can quickly alternate between pads and sort of shimmy out your socket. I pushed my lock too far and tore out a pad this way. I was too far committed to finishing this on the same night to be discouraged by a simple pad that was torn off though. It was an opportunity to finally test out those fine enamel-coated trace repair wires that I got a few months prior. This would be a great first-time practice with those on a board where, even if I wasn't successful, I had an alternate way of getting stereo sound anyway. I didn't capture footage of the whole trace wire replacement because I wanted to double down on my concentration. I had to burn off the enamel in the spots where I wanted to make contact with it at the end of the R38 resistor. Then I shaped it roughly as an oval where the pad used to be. It took quite a few tries and using 2 pairs of pliers to bend it into proper shape. Once the pin of the new socket was in place, added with fresh solder, a good conductive continuity was formed and I was good to go for testing. I got it right away when I performed my first tests with the case opened, so I was cleared to reassemble the case and capture some footage for this video. This is the test I quickly wrote in Super Basic just to get it to output a different tone for left and right channel. I'm sending the note A2 to the left channel and sending something else to the right channel. If you are a year 1 owner of a 2023 made F256Jr, this test will work as intended and you will hear it in stereo. Unless you've installed an audio connector on the front bezel, then it won't work. I don't own a F256Jr, so I can't personally verify this information that was provided by Stephanie, but an owner of that machine could potentially reach out after a test and write the result in the comments. If you are a year 1 owner of a 2023 made F256K like I am, this test will output in mono and both tones are sent to both sides. If you are an owner of a 2024 made of either of those machines, this problem has been rectified and you should hear stereo as intended from that output jack in all cases, whenever the audio signal is in fact prepared in stereo. So, before I replaced the socket, this is what a recording of my test looked like in Audacity, and this is what it sounded like. After I replaced the socket, this clearly became stereo and the recording looked like this. And if you want to hear it, make sure you brace yourself and use headphones or the stereo output method of your choice. A more fun test is the FNX 23 demo that I featured last December on my channel. The demo uses the stereo capability brilliantly and is what actually led people to realize about the mono issue of these machines in the first place. Give it a listen, preferably with headphones. There you have it. I hope this helps understand the issue and spread the message. See you next time.